Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to OpenGov TV. I got Guna over here, who's the country manager for Singapore for Red Hat. We are discussing the future of digital transformation. Now, as we all know, digital transformation is a journey, but it needs a couple of enablers. The biggest enabler that's coming around is cloud. We need our data available everywhere, anywhere, secure, and scalable. But we have lots of technology that inherently is still archaic, or we call behind time. Yet the new applications are demanding that we use the new resources with the new tech by balancing what we already have under the hood. So Guna, please enlighten me and tell me, how do we go about this journey? What are the 1, 2, or 3 pillars that you think we should be focusing towards?
Thanks, Mohit. Actually, you brought up a very interesting point, right? When people start looking at cloud as the answer or the solution, I think that's the wrong perception to start working towards. If you look back at, for example, the Industrial Revolution, oil or electricity were enablers to a transformation, the Industrial Revolution. Likewise, the cloud is actually a technology, right? It's built on things like OpenStack, it's built on things like Linux. So when cloud technologies prevailed or came to the forefront, it became an enabler for the new digital transformation or the digital revolution. So when organizations are starting to look at it, they should not be looking at it, cloud is the answer, but rather the technologies that brought cloud to the forefront, the ability to provision environments quickly, the ease of spinning up environments, shutting it down, instead of going through a lengthy procurement cycle to buy hardware or physically manage the servers. So all of that stuff went away because you could now have a IT infrastructure in a very easy, flexible manner where it was not a barrier to innovation. Previously, when you wanted to do something, then the biggest challenge was, do I have the infrastructure? How long does it take for me to get the infrastructure? Getting the infrastructure up, getting my application developed, that was the challenge that most organizations had with respect to transformation. So it was more glacial transformation rather than digital transformation. So cloud technologies, which a lot of people associate with public cloud, again, were the initial enablers, but the same technology now is so prevalent. I mean, this is a primary advantage of open source, right? Because the technology that was originally available on public clouds is now available for consumption everywhere. So as I was talking to her recently, just yesterday, in fact, with a bank, they actually started evaluating public cloud 3 to 5 years ago. And when they started looking at moving workloads to public cloud, they kind of realized that the cost actually, not just the IT or compute cost, but the overall cost of managing the infrastructure, the effort required to move workloads to the public cloud were actually quite high. And in the last 3 to 5 years, they've built up capabilities to actually have a model where they took the technologies that actually enabled the public cloud and actually implemented their own private cloud, leveraging the same technology. So now what they have is an infrastructure that can have the flexibility that the public cloud provides, while at the same time, it gives them the cost benefits of having infrastructure on-premise as well, the security, the control, the skill sets to manage it. At some point, they may transition more to a public cloud heavy organization, but they could at the same time remain a private cloud on-premise organization. So the challenge is always not just about moving. The challenge is about how do you innovate and how you do the transformation and what's the best answer for you as an organization.
No, fair. And you're right. You raised some very good points over here. But then let me probe that a little bit deeper. When an organization starts going on that journey, because, and you're right, they've been evaluating this for a while, but now that they're at the cusp of that, what are the skill sets? What are the capabilities a outfit needs to start this transition so it is seamless? It is not going to disrupt their day-to-day business, yet take them to the new pastures that they're trying to get to.
So if you look at from a skill set perspective, it is not a disruptive skill set. It's like what we in Singapore say, same but not same, right? So if you are a system administrator or whether you are a developer, it's pretty much the same skills, right? How do you manage Linux servers, for example, or how do you manage Java applications, or how do you build applications. But things have been changing, and IT has always been changing. So the skill sets are incremental rather than disruptive. It's not like you have to go out there and learn something completely new. But the way that technology is implemented to be agile, to be flexible, like in a cloud model, does require you to pick up new skills. For example, as a developer, instead of using the traditional waterfall method, going down agile, using new sets of tools, language not necessarily are different, but tooling like CI/CD, etc., or DevOps to get into a mode of continuous development, continuous integration. So how do you actually change the processes, bring the existing skills that you have to the new processes? So there is a change required. So from a skill set perspective, there is no magic answer saying learn Linux, learn Java, learn Python. If there was an answer, every Singaporean mother or father would be putting their kids through Python classes at primary 6. It doesn't happen that way, right? But the skills required are more about how infrastructure is designed for a cloud infrastructure, because the underlying architecture has changed. Yes, it's still the same storage servers, you still have your file systems, you still have the same networking, you still have the same TCP, you still have the same servers, whether Intel or otherwise. But what has changed is the way you implement it, the way you provision it, the way you do your day 2 operation has kind of changed. And one of the core skills, if anyone was to ask me what skill would I really need, is coding. Everything is code. Infrastructure is code. Software is code. So if there's one skill that as an organization that you would need, regardless of system administrator or developers, really focus on building developer skills, as in coding skills. It is not, the bar is not that high. There are a lot of low code platforms, but having some coding skills is definitely required as a critical skill.
No, and that makes sense. But you know what? Still, it's called migration, right? So some of that new stuff that's being built on the new platform, i.e., cloud, on-prem, or public. But at the same token, you got existing old legacy system that you're going to try and migrate. So how does either government or an agency ensure that they don't break internally what's currently working while they go on to this journey?
Agreed. So everyone makes it sound so easy, but it's never easy, right? If you were born on the cloud, one product company or one solution company where the only thing that you do is one offering, yes, it is very simple to be born on the cloud, regardless whether you're a Facebook or you're a Grab. You came out with one product, one service, and you built it on the cloud. That was easy. But if you look at a government agency or generally any large enterprise, there are many things that an organization has to do, whether for regulatory reasons or business operations. To try and move everything at the same time to this is a massive endeavor, right? It's never going to happen where you have a big bang implementation. But at the same time, for me to just try and do a lift and shift and move things, even in piecemeal, just moving it to the cloud does require a lot of effort, because my networking is different, my infra is different, the way I manage my operations is different, the way I manage security is different. Because remember, you have a cloud provider who's in between you and your actual system. You don't touch it anymore. You don't control everything anymore. You control some of the things. So there is a balance required when you want to move from on-premise, your own application, to a cloud-like infrastructure, even if it's on-premise. That re-engineering or refactoring is important. If you can refactor your applications, right, break it down to what we call microservices, if you can break it down and modernize the applications, then guess what? You will get a lot more benefits. But there are different approaches, because you can't just say I break an application and I move 2 parts of it today and I'll move the next 2 parts tomorrow. I mean, just like moving house, right? We can't move house in piecemeal. You can move your bed on one day and move your sofa on one day, but you can't be doing this for the next 1 year, right? You need to move and live in one platform. You can't be commuting between 2 places all the time. Likewise, your data, your infrastructure, they can't exist in multiple places at the same time without any careful planning. So it does require you to look at it. There are many strategies: lift and shift, just lift your application and modernize them, or completely refactor. To what degree you adjust each of the applications depends. And that's where Red Hat has been helping a lot of organizations look at their current readiness for cloud, whether it's private cloud or public cloud, what is your level of readiness, which applications should move, which applications shouldn't be modernized, which applications should be trashed and completely rebuilt, for example. So that's one of the things that Red Hat actually helps a lot of customers with in terms of identifying what is the right way that works for them.
Right. So you're talking about making sure that you have the right components in the right place, either on your own on-prem or on the public cloud, hence the hybrid model coming into play. But let's take that one step further. When you're doing all these things, security becomes a paramount important. So what should one be focusing on, when it comes to the security landscape, when you've got things in multiple places?
So I think if you break the word security up, if you look at the traditional security, do I have my firewall? Do I have is my systems protected? And a lot of people would say cloud or public clouds are actually more protected than an on-premise infrastructure or your private infrastructure. But I think security is not just about that. And I think a lot of organizations realize that security is just not about hardening my environment, but it's all about even governance, internal threats, or just pure mistakes. All of these end up in issues. So if you look at all of the recent or all of the hacks that we had in Singapore, all the failures, cybersecurity failures in Singapore, a lot of them were human error, right? Outages, human error. Someone forgot to fix or patch a server, for example. So security is key and critical. But when you move to the cloud, it's not just about hardening environment. It's all about having the right processes in place. So DevOps became DevSecOps. How do you actually develop and operationalize your environment in a secure manner? So security is now inherently part of the whole process. So it's not let's develop an environment, develop an application, let's secure it. Let me have my SIEM or my antivirus to harden it and secure it. No, it's not. At the code level, what policies do I have? Who actually develops code? How are they developing that code? Have they injected something in there? Or even just from a governance perspective, are they using the same base image that the other guys are using? And if this is my corporate approved image, I can't have another developer just choosing a latest version just because he wants to use the latest and greatest, right? I need to have consistency within my organization. So security is now inherent part of the entire cloud journey. Right? It is not a protective shield, or neither is it an add-on or bolt-on.
Right. It's not a bubble, basically. You're right. It has to be in every grain, everywhere. It's thought through. And you're right. It's by design, right?
Yes.
Not just in the afterthought that most people think it is. But okay, so let's put this together. You're talking about skill sets. You're talking about ensuring that your lift and shift is correct. You're going to make sure that things are in the right places. Can you give me an example of a recent activity that Red Hat did to help one of your customers on that journey?
All right. So let me just walk through maybe two different clients, right? And I want to emphasize two different clients because, like I said, it is not one or the other. And I don't want to give an impression that there's only one way to do this and this is how everyone does it. Organization that start the particular large organization, Singapore, a well-known brand, they started moving towards the public cloud vendor 5 years ago. So they started moving applications, they started testing systems out, started playing with systems on public cloud. But what they've realized over the last 5 years is that from an infrastructure perspective, their people were not ready, their processes were not ready. So what they realized is that they would use the last 5 years, and it's a long time for a commercial organization, right, in a competitive world, to invest time in learning what's the best way to do it. So what they did was in the last 5 years, they did move workloads to public cloud, but they learned how public clouds are run. And in fact, now they're moving more and more of their workload back on premise. And the reason why they do it is they've learned how to do it. The technologies are now available. So like I said, it's all about open source, right? So they can actually set up a private cloud using the same technologies that any of the public cloud vendors are using, right? The OpenStack and all of the same open source technologies. They used it to build their own private cloud, and they're managing it exactly the same way a public cloud provider does it. And by doing that, they've got now better security because they don't have to worry about someone else's interface between them and a public cloud vendor. They've got a more control over the overall cost. And with all of the new technologies, they've actually been able to get a consumption model with, for example, Red Hat pricing from the hardware vendor. They get the flexibility, etc. But at the same time, there are other organizations that say, look, I really want to do only cloud first, and I don't want to have my own data center. I want to move everything to public cloud. But I do have regulatory concerns. So the ability to do a hybrid multi-cloud then becomes really critical. So they chose to work with Red Hat because they could now keep a lot of their core development, secure processes, everything in place on-premise. They develop the applications and they move the applications to public cloud. And to them, public cloud is a commodity. Yes, we have AWS, we have the Azure, but we have the Huawei's, the Alibabas, you have the NCS, you have the Singtel. Cloud providers, public cloud providers, from an infrastructure perspective, they are like a dime a dozen. So why would I want to be locked into any single public cloud provider when all I'm using them for is compute, right? So if that's the case, then what they wanted to have is be able to develop in the same manner, have the right control, right processes, regardless of whether they're deploying on one public cloud or two public cloud or even any public cloud. And even when you start looking at deploying applications on SaaS providers or SaaS-enabled applications, the same policies, the same controls will all apply because they've got an enterprise platform that they've set up that actually has got common security, common governance rules, common developer or DevOps pipeline that they can now develop and deploy applications anywhere. So you do have multiple organizations, but the primary premise is always comes down to, if not one or the other, public or private cloud, as long as you have the right technology or the platform in place, you are not moving into a direction where at some point in time you'll turn around and say, why did I do this 30 years ago? Why am I with this public cloud provider when there's something else better out there, right? We've gone through the mainframes, we've gone through the Linux world. Everything was the best and the greatest at that point in time. But it became a negative thing many years down the line. So likewise, having the ability to be hybrid and multi-cloud gives you the advantage to be able to move things around or be flexible in your long-term strategy.
That makes sense. So then let's hit on the WTF. What's the future? What does Red Hat bring in? Okay, that is looking from its lens and saying, this is the place that we're going. This is a tech that we're going to bring in to help our customers on that future journey.
Okay, so I'm not a wizard. I'm not going to look at the crystal ball and say what's going to happen. But if you look at in the near term, security, governance, policies in this cloud journey have been very much, I would say, understated, or a lot of organizations have not been actively looking at it. Public clouds are secure. Let's move things to public cloud. But it's not that public cloud is secure or not secure. It's have you closed all the doors behind you? In a public cloud environment, it's almost like a hotel. There are many windows. You have to close every one of those windows. When you had a data center, your data center had a main door, and you had a security guard with a key, and you were the only guy who can get it. But when you go to public cloud, it's like a hotel. There's a lot of rooms, a lot of windows, and your people need to learn how to close all of those doors and all of those windows. Otherwise, you have a potential breach that you caused, not your cloud vendor. So I think there will be a lot more focus on security, governance, policies, also automation. Like a lot of the issues that a lot of people face is human error. It's not because a person is incompetent, but human error does creep in. So automation would be the next big thing for next maybe 1 to 2 years. Being able to automate your DevOps. How do I automate my server configuration, patching, or even my day 2 operations, integrating my ticketing system, like for example, ServiceNow and my SIEM, like Splunk, and literally having an integrated automated environment across public and private cloud. I would think that would be the near term. The longer term, and this is a conversation I had with the bank CIO just yesterday, right? He brought up the point about with the world going the way it is, if you are a global organization or you've got regional aspirations, you will need to work with the Huawei or the Ali clouds, etc. So how do you actually have a balanced structure where I do need to go with Ali or Huawei or Tencent in China, and I may have to go with someone else in India, and I may have to have some other local or regional players. So how do I do this? And if everyone is bringing the price down, and because at the moment now, for public cloud is literally, are you 10 cents $1 an hour, or are you 9 cents an hour? It's effectively a dynamics of cost. And we all know, because the technology is the same, And as the technology gets mature, there's little to differentiate compute, and the price will just keep dropping. So as an organization, should I be looking at the public cloud? I said, yeah, you should look at public cloud because they will offer you compute at the lowest possible price. And that compute will be a lot cheaper than your compute. So if you've implemented the right process in place, you will be able to move not to one public cloud, but you move to a lot of public cloud and just treat them as someone else's data center that you're leasing. So I'm starting to see a world where public cloud is not a big thing anymore. It's not, I'm going somewhere. It's just part of me, just down the road, another data center. And you start looking at this, edge and IoT become more critical because why do I need to move data to a cloud provider? And if my data is coming from my traffic cameras, etc., can I process it at the edge? Why do I need to move? Because now, instead of size of data, the latency of data is becoming more critical. So if size of data is less important than latency, then I want to be able to process that data on premise, at the edge, do my AI at the edge, so much so that I can process all of that stuff and only send stuff to a cloud or even send it to my data center from the summary or the final result. So I would say in the longer term, public cloud becoming just a data center, there wouldn't be anything different. I'll see a lot more stuff coming up at the edge. AI is already a thing. AI being applied at the edge. You will see a lot more automation at the edge as well. So I see that as the medium to long-term trend where cloud becomes just another data center.
Yeah, Guna, thank you for that. That was quite insightful. Ladies and gentlemen, Guna once again, okay, who is the general manager for Singapore Red Hat. Guna, thank you very much for your time. Appreciate this.
Thanks, Mohit. Nice talking to you as always.
Okay,
bye-bye.
Absolutely. Bye-bye.